The greenhouse hermit. The last transport shuttle departed Viridian Station in a cloud of dust and engine exhaust, leaving Elijah Nakamura alone again, just as he preferred. He watched from the observation deck of his greenhouse dome as the ship became a dwindling speck against the lavender sky of this frontier world. "Another 6 months of blessed silence," he murmured, running his hand through his unkempt black hair. At 35, Elijah had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years under alien suns. The lines around his eyes weren't from laughter. He turned back to his sanctuary, a massive geodesic dome filled with plants from 12 different worlds. This remote terraforming outpost was officially designated VRD-9, but the company had marketed it as Viridian Station to attract colonists. So far, only the preliminary terraforming crew had come and gone, leaving Elijah to monitor the atmospheric conversion gardens alone. That suited him perfectly. After blowing the whistle on Terra Nova Corporation's illegal harvesting of sacred plants from the Centauri natives, no research institution would touch him. This isolation was both his punishment and his refuge. "Time for the evening nutrient cycle," he said to nobody in particular as he moved through the rows of experimental oxygen-producing flora. Each plant had been genetically modified to process the methane-heavy atmosphere of Viridian into something humans could eventually breathe without assistance. The sunset cast prismatic patterns through the hexagonal panels of the dome, bathing everything in golden-pink light. Outside, the untamed landscape of purple vegetation and rocky outcroppings stretched to the horizon, beautiful and alien. Elijah was adjusting the mineral content in the hydroponic feeds when the proximity alarm blared, startling him so badly he dropped a beaker of carefully balanced nutrients. "What the—" He rushed to the monitoring station. Nothing was scheduled to arrive for months. The security screen showed an unidentified object had breached the atmosphere and was descending rapidly toward the station. Not a ship, too small. A probe? A meteorite? Whatever it was, it crashed less than a kilometer from his dome with enough force to make the ground tremble beneath his feet. Protocol demanded he alert Terra Nova headquarters immediately, but Elijah hesitated. Corporate would send a retrieval team, which meant stripping anything of potential value and leaving environmental damage in their wake. Just a quick look first, he decided, grabbing his environment suit and emergency medkit. The twilight had deepened by the time Elijah reached the impact site. What he found made him stop in his tracks. This was no meteorite or probe. A being lay half-submerged in the crater, glowing faintly against the disturbed soil. She, appeared humanoid, but with skin that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescence, pulsing weakly like a fading heartbeat. Her hair floated around her head as if suspended in water. Despite the planet's standard gravity, most striking were the delicate patterns that traced across her skin like luminescent veins or the branching patterns of leaves. They flickered erratically, and Elijah's scientific mind immediately recognized a distress pattern. "Hello?" he called, approaching carefully. "Can you understand me?" The being's eyes fluttered open, iridescent and pupilless. They fixed on him with startling awareness. When she tried to move, a wince of pain crossed her face. "Don't try to move," he said, kneeling beside her. "You're injured." To his surprise, she responded in accented but clear English. "The atmosphere, poisonous to me, need light." Her illumination dimmed further, and Elijah made a split-second decision that went against every protocol in his contract. He carefully lifted her from the crater. She was surprisingly light, almost weightless in his arms, and began carrying her back to his greenhouse. "I'm Elijah," he said as he walked, partly to keep her conscious. "You're on Viridian Station." "I'm going to help you." "Naya," she whispered, her voice like wind through crystal chimes. "I am Naya of the Lumari. My ship attacked." "Save your strength," Elijah told her as the dome came into view. "My greenhouse should have what you need. Light, clean air, water." As he carried her through the airlock, Naya's luminescence brightened momentarily. "Plants," she murmured. "I feel them. Singing." Elijah placed her gently on a bed of moss in the center of his tropical section, where artificial sun lamps maintained optimal growing conditions. Almost immediately, her bioluminescent patterns began to pulse more regularly. "The plants," she said again, "stronger now. They recognize me." Elijah watched in astonishment as the surrounding plants, specimens from Earth, Proxima Centauri, and various exomoons, began to bend toward her, as if drawn by some invisible force. "What are you?" he whispered, scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. Naya's iridescent eyes met his. "We are the gardeners of stars," she said, "and I am very far from home." The healing light. 3 days had passed since Naya's arrival, and Elijah's greenhouse had transformed. Plants that had been meticulously arranged in orderly rows now curved toward the center where the Lumari rested. Some specimens had grown nearly twice their normal size, while others had bloomed out of season, filling the dome with intoxicating scents. "Your recovery is remarkable," Elijah observed, monitoring Naya's vital signs with a handheld scanner. The readings made little sense. Her biology defied his equipment's parameters. Naya sat cross-legged on the moss bed, her luminescence restored to a steady glow that cast soft shadows through the greenhouse. The injuries from her crash, fractures and contusions his scanner had initially detected, had healed with astonishing speed. "It is the communion," she explained, gesturing to the plants surrounding them. "All living things share energy when properly attuned. Your greenhouse provides the perfect harmony." Elijah shook his head in wonder. "On Earth, we have theories about plant communication through mycelial networks, but nothing like this. Your scientists understand the melody, but miss the symphony," Naya said with a gentle smile. She reached out, touching a nearby fern. It unfurled visibly beneath her fingertips. "All life sings together." Elijah found himself increasingly fascinated not just by her abilities but by Naya herself. Her movements were graceful, almost hypnotic. When she spoke, her luminescent patterns shifted subtly with her emotions, something Elijah was learning to read. "You mentioned being attacked," he said carefully. "Who would want to harm you?" Naya's light dimmed momentarily. "There are those who see the Lumari as resources rather than people. Our connection to plant life is valuable. My scout vessel was pursued by harvesters." "Harvesters?" "They collect biological specimens for profit," she explained. "My sister Lyra and I separated to confuse them. She will be searching for me." The proximity alarm blared again, making them both tense. "That might be her now," Naya said, her patterns brightening with hope. Elijah checked the monitor. "Something's approaching fast, smaller than a corporate shuttle." He hesitated. "I should go meet it. If it's your sister, fine. If not, I'll come with you," Naya insisted, rising gracefully to her feet. "You're still recovering." "I am Lumari," she said with unexpected steel in her melodic voice. "We face danger together or not at all." Outside, the alien landscape had taken on the deep indigo hue of evening. A streak of light cut across the sky, descending in a controlled spiral toward the station. "That's no crash," Elijah remarked, relieved. "That's a landing." The vessel that touched down was elegant and organic in design, resembling a massive seed pod. Its surface shimmered with the same bioluminescence as Naya's skin. The pod split open like a blooming flower, and another Lumari emerged. Taller than Naya, with patterns that pulsed in sharper, more angular designs, she moved with predatory grace. Unlike Naya's gentle glow, this newcomer's light shifted through cooler tones, blues and purples rather than golds and ambers. "Lyra!" Naya called out, her joy evident in the cascade of light that rippled across her skin. The two Lumari embraced, their luminescence merging in a breathtaking display of color. When they separated, Lyra's attention turned immediately to Elijah, her iridescent eyes narrowing with suspicion. "This human has sheltered you?" she asked, her accent more pronounced than Naya's. "He saved my life," Naya confirmed. "Elijah Nakamura is a botanist." "A plant tender?" Lyra's expression softened marginally. "Then he understands the value of nurturing life." She inclined her head. "You have my gratitude, plant tender." "Just doing the right thing," Elijah said uncomfortably. "Your sister needed help." Few humans would extend such aid to an unknown species, Lyra observed. Especially one pursued by harvesters. Did you evade them? Naya asked anxiously. Lyra's patterns darkened. For now. I damaged their navigation systems, but they are persistent. We should not linger. I need more time, Naya protested. The injuries to my light core are still healing, and she glanced at Elijah. I've discovered something remarkable here. She led them both back to the greenhouse, where Lyra stopped at the entrance, her luminescence flaring with surprise. These plants, she whispered, they've been altered. Genetically modified? Elijah explained, feeling strangely defensive. For terraforming purposes. No, Lyra approached the specimen of modified bamboo. Something more. They carry traces of ancient songs. She looked at him sharply. Where did you get these specimens? Elijah hesitated. Some are from Earth, others from exoplanets being colonized. My former employer, Terra Nova Corporation, collected samples from across the galaxy, including plants sacred to indigenous peoples, Naya added softly. Having gleaned this from their conversations, Lyra's patterns shifted to a deep, angry crimson. The harvesters and your corporation may be connected. I don't work for them anymore, Elijah said quickly. I reported their illegal harvesting activities. That's why I'm here, exiled to this outpost. A whistleblower, Lyra said, her luminescence calming. Perhaps we have more in common than I thought. That night, as Viridian's 3 moons rose, casting multicolored light through the dome, the three shared a meal. Elijah prepared his carefully rationed earth foods, while the Lumari sisters consumed light directly, absorbing it through their luminescent patterns. Lyra explained their people's history, how the Lumari had evolved in a binary star system, developing their bioluminescence as a way to communicate during the rare periods of darkness between eclipses. Our ancestors learned to work with plants, forming symbiotic relationships, she said. Now we can sense the needs of any photosynthetic life form and help it thrive. Which makes you valuable to corporations expanding into hostile environments. Elijah concluded grimly. Precisely, Lyra nodded. They wish to use us as living terraforming tools. Like they're using me, Elijah said, the parallel suddenly clear. Naya, who had been quieter than usual, suddenly placed her hand over his. Her touch sent a pleasant warmth up his arm. You understand our struggle, she said softly. That is why the plants respond to you almost as they do to us. The simple contact sent his heart racing. Something was happening between them. Something neither his scientific training nor his years of isolation had prepared him for. Later, as the sisters rested, absorbing moonlight through the dome, Elijah reviewed his communication logs. He needed to report to Terra Nova soon or risk them sending a check-in team. As he composed a deliberately vague update about atmospheric conversion rates, a notification flashed on his screen. An unscheduled corporate shuttle was en route to Viridian Station. Estimated arrival, 48 hours. Seeds of trust. The morning sun cast prism-like refractions through the greenhouse dome as Elijah paced, running his hand through his disheveled hair. We have less than 2 days before a corporate shuttle arrives. They're not scheduled. This is an inspection. Lyra's luminescence pulsed with agitation, her patterns shifting to sharp angles. They know we're here. Impossible, Elijah countered. My communications have been generic. I haven't mentioned either of you. Naya, who sat communing with a cluster of sensitive orchids, looked up. Perhaps they detected our vessels? Or Lyra's pursuit of the harvesters? Whatever the reason, we cannot be found here, Lyra stated firmly. We should leave immediately. Elijah felt a surprising pang at the thought of their departure, particularly Naya's. These few days had awakened something in him that years of isolation had buried. Wait, he said. Terra Nova doesn't know what you are. You could pose as research assistants, botanical specialists I requested months ago. Deception is a fragile shield, Lyra warned. And what about your luminescence? Elijah added, reconsidering. It's not exactly human. Naya stood, her movement graceful as flowing water. We can suppress our light when necessary. To demonstrate, she closed her eyes in concentration. The golden glow of her skin dimmed until she appeared almost human, albeit with an unusual iridescent quality to her complexion. It causes discomfort, she admitted, like holding one's breath, but we can maintain it when needed. Their planning was interrupted by another alarm, not the proximity sensor but a different tone that made Elijah freeze. "What now?" Lyra demanded. "Long-range detection," Elijah explained, rushing to the monitoring station. "Something large has entered the system." The screen displayed a massive vessel in orbit around Viridian, at least 20 times the size of a standard corporate shuttle. Its design was unmistakably similar to the Lumari scout ships, but on an imposing scale. "The Seed ship," Naya whispered, her luminescence flaring with excitement despite her attempt to suppress it. "Ambassador Orion has come himself." "Ambassador?" Elijah echoed. "Our people's envoy," Lyra explained, her own light brightening. "If he's here, the situation is more significant than we realized." Within the hour, a delegation from the Seed ship descended to the planet's surface. Elijah stood with the Lumari sisters outside the greenhouse dome, watching in awe as 3 shuttle pods bloomed open upon landing, unfurling like massive flowers. The central figure that emerged could only be Ambassador Orion. Taller than either Naya or Lyra by at least a foot, his luminescence was a spectacular tapestry of colors that shifted in complex patterns. Where the sisters' light was primarily concentrated in vein-like channels across their skin, Orion's entire being seemed to radiate with carefully controlled power. He was flanked by 4 other Lumari, their patterns marking them as some kind of honor guard. "Naya, Lyra," Orion's voice resonated with harmonic undertones. "Your signal was received." He turned to Elijah, iridescent eyes assessing him carefully. "And this is the human botanist who offered sanctuary." Elijah bowed slightly, unsure of the proper protocol. "Elijah Nakamura, Ambassador. Welcome to Viridian Station." "A humble welcome for such a momentous meeting," Orion replied, his English perfect if oddly musical. "The first official contact between Lumari and human outside the shadow of corporate interests." "Official contact?" Elijah looked confused. "I don't represent Earth or any coalition." "Yet you represent something more valuable." Orion gestured toward the greenhouse. "May we continue this conversation among the growing things? Our kind finds comfort there." Inside the dome, the plants reacted dramatically to the presence of multiple Lumari, reaching toward them as if drawn by invisible magnets. Orion moved through the rows with appreciation evident in his luminescent patterns. "Extraordinary work," he commented. "These hybridizations show remarkable intuition." "Thank you," Elijah said, surprised by the compliment. "It's taken years of trial and error." "No ordinary botanist could achieve such harmony," Orion observed. "Naya was right about you." "Right about what?" Orion reached into a pouch at his waist and withdrew a small translucent container. Inside were what appeared to be seeds, but unlike any Elijah had ever seen. They glowed with their own inner light, pulsing in synchronized rhythm. "These are Stellaris seeds," Orion explained, "the most sacred of our agricultural treasures. They grow into plants capable of purifying any atmosphere, accelerating terraforming by decades." Elijah stared at the seeds in wonder. "They're bioluminescent, like you." "We evolved together," Naya explained, moving to stand beside him. "The Stellaris and the Lumari share ancestral DNA. When properly cultivated," Orion continued, "these could transform colonies struggling with atmospheric toxicity, including many human outposts." The implications were staggering. Elijah had seen the reports of failing colonies, places where terraforming had stalled or reversed, leaving settlers dependent on artificial environments. "Why show these to me?" he asked, though he suspected the answer. "We propose an alliance," Orion said. "The first cooperative cultivation project between our species. You would grow these here, under Lumari guidance. You want me to plant these on a Terra Nova-controlled world? Your corporation's claim to this planet is disputed?" Orion's patterns shifted subtly. "The seed ship's arrival has been noted by your Earth coalition. Diplomatic channels are opening as we speak. Elijah shook his head, overwhelmed. This is beyond me. I'm just a botanist. You are more, Naya said softly, her hand finding his. You are a bridge between our kinds. The warmth of her touch traveled through him, and Elijah found himself unable to look away from her iridescent eyes. There is one condition, Orion added, breaking the moment. The Stellaris require constant attention from those attuned to their needs. Naya has volunteered to remain as your partner in this venture. Elijah glanced at Naya, whose luminescence rippled with emotion. You'd stay? If you'll have me, she replied, her patterns brightening in what he now recognized as hope. The corporate shuttle, Lyra interjected. It arrives tomorrow. By then, this station will be under joint Lumari human protection, Orion assured them. The diplomatic protocols are being established now. That evening, after Orion and his entourage returned to the seed ship to continue negotiations with Earth authorities, Elijah found Naya in the arboretum section of his greenhouse. She stood among the transplanted earth trees, her suppressed luminescence now released to flow freely across her skin. You knew the ambassador would come, Elijah said. It wasn't a question. I hoped, Naya admitted. When the harvesters attacked us, Lyra and I sent emergency signals. But I didn't know if they were received. And your volunteering to stay here? Was that planned too? She turned to face him fully. No, that was my choice alone. She hesitated, then added, unless you prefer I leave. Elijah stepped closer, drawn to her in ways he couldn't entirely explain. I've been alone here for 3 years. The thought of having someone to share this with, especially someone who understands plants the way you do. Is that all I would be? A research partner? Her patterns swirled in complex emotions he was still learning to read. No, he admitted softly. These past days with you have been... I felt more alive than I have in years. Naya's luminescence brightened and she reached up to touch his face. Her fingers were warm against his skin, sending pleasant shivers down his spine. There is a connection between us, she whispered. I felt it from the moment you carried me from the crash. The plants feel it too. They respond to our combined presence in ways I've never witnessed. As if confirming her words, the foliage around them seemed to bend inward, creating a private sanctuary of leaves and branches. Elijah gently traced the luminescent patterns on her arm, watching as they brightened at his touch. This alliance Orion proposed, it's not just about plants, is it? The Stellaris are only the beginning, Naya confirmed. Our peoples have much to learn from each other. Her fingers entwined with his. Starting with us, their first kiss was gentle, explorative. Naya's luminescence flared brilliantly, bathing them both in golden light as they embraced among the responsive plants of the arboretum. Neither noticed the small drone hovering outside the dome, its Terra Nova Corporation logo partially obscured, its camera focused intently on their intertwined figures. Corporate shadows. The dawn brought a diffuse golden light through Viridian's atmospheric haze. Elijah stood at the monitoring station checking the approaching corporate shuttle's trajectory for the 5th time. They've accelerated, he told Naya, who was preparing the special soil mixture for the Stellaris seeds. Estimated arrival in 3 hours instead of 6. Naya's luminescence dimmed slightly with concern, though she maintained her focus on the delicate work. The seed bed she'd created was a marvel, a blending of Viridian soil, specialized nutrients from Elijah's supplies, and a crystalline substance she'd collected from her vessel. Orion has not yet returned with the diplomatic arrangements, she noted. And he's not responding to communication attempts, Elijah added grimly. Something's wrong. Lyra entered the main chamber, her patterns sharp with tension. The seed ship is moving out of direct orbit, defensive positioning. They're detecting multiple vessels approaching the system. Terra Nova's bringing reinforcements, Elijah concluded. This isn't a routine inspection. We should accelerate our plans, Naya decided, gently placing the first of the glowing Stellaris seeds into the prepared medium. It pulsed once brightly, then settled into a steady rhythm. Once rooted, the seeds will be harder to transport without killing them. You're planting them now? Elijah asked, surprised. Without Orion's protection, we cannot wait, she insisted. The seeds sense danger. They're preparing to enter dormancy as a defense mechanism. If that happens, they won't germinate for another cycle, nearly an Earth year. Lyra moved to the communications array. I'll return to my vessel and attempt to contact the seed ship from closer range. Be careful, Naya warned. If Terra Nova has brought specialized equipment, I've evaded human sensors before, Lyra assured her with a confidence that didn't quite reach her luminescent patterns. Keep planting. I'll return with word from Orion. As Lyra departed, Elijah joined Naya at the seedbed. The first seed had already sent out gossamer-thin rootlets that glowed with the same bioluminescence as the Lumari themselves. It's responding to you, he observed. To us, she corrected, taking his hand and placing it near the planted seed. Immediately, the rootlets oriented toward his fingers, reaching out. The Stellaris recognize you as part of their cultivation team. Elijah felt a strange tingling where the rootlets made contact, not unpleasant, but alien. What are they doing? Reading you, Naya explained. Your biochemistry, your intentions, your compatibility with their growth cycle, and if they find me wanting. Her patterns swirled in what he now recognized as amusement. They would withdraw. But they're not. They're embracing you. Together they continued planting, each seed responding more quickly than the last. By the time they'd placed the 12th and final seed, the entire bed glowed with an otherworldly light, rootlets interconnecting in complex patterns. The proximity alarm shattered their focus. The shuttles arrived early, Elijah said, checking the monitor. And it's not alone, there's a second vessel. Military grade. Naya's luminescence dimmed to near-human levels. Her defensive response. Where is Lyra? She should have returned by now. No word, Elijah confirmed, his worry mounting. We need to protect the seeds. If Terra Nova discovers what we're doing, they would take them, Naya finished. Experiment on them. Attempt to mass produce without understanding. Which would kill them, Elijah guessed. Naya nodded gravely. The Stellaris cannot be forced or accelerated. Each seed must establish its own relationship with its environment. The communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. Elijah hesitated before accepting it. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Elegant, severe, with calculating eyes and silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun. Elijah's stomach dropped. Director Zhao, he acknowledged stiffly. Dr. Nakamura. Victoria Zhao's smile didn't reach her eyes. It's been too long. I trust you've been productive in your sabbatical. This isn't scheduled inspection time, Elijah replied, ignoring her false pleasantries. The atmospheric conversion reports were submitted on time. Oh, this isn't about your reports, Zhao's gaze shifted, trying to see more of the greenhouse behind him. This is about your visitors. Unauthorized extraterrestrial contact violates at least 6 clauses of your contract. Elijah felt cold dread settle in his stomach. How much did she know? I've been authorized to secure any alien biological material you may have acquired, Zhao continued. For safekeeping, of course. There's nothing here that concerns Terra Nova, Elijah stated firmly. Trying to keep Naya out of the camera's view, our sensors indicate otherwise. Zhao's artificial pleasantness evaporated. We're detecting unusual energy signatures and biological activity beyond the parameters of your approved experiments. We're landing now. Prepare for inspection. The transmission cut off before Elijah could respond. They know about the Stellaris, he told Naya, who had pressed herself against the wall just out of view. Not everything, she replied. Their instruments can detect the energy but not understand it. She moved to the seedbed. We must protect them until they establish deeper roots. How long will that take? Hours at minimum. Days for optimal security. Elijah ran through their options, none of them good. We can try to stall Zhao, but once she's inside the dome, could we move them? Naya suggested. Not without disturbing the root system now that they've started connecting. Elijah paced, thinking rapidly. We need to hide them in plain sight. A plan formed in his mind. The experimental hybridization chamber. It has specialized shielding to prevent cross-pollination. If we move the seedbed there and recalibrate the shielding, it might mask their energy signature, Naya finished, her patterns brightening with hope. They worked quickly, carefully transferring the entire seedbed into the cylindrical chamber at the rear of the greenhouse. Elijah modified the shielding parameters while Naya communed with the seeds, encouraging them to temporarily dim their luminescence. "They understand the danger," she said, her voice tinged with wonder. "They're accelerating their root development to anchor themselves more securely." The sound of the airlock opening announced Zhao's arrival. Elijah gave Naya's hand a quick squeeze before they moved to greet their unwelcome visitors. Victoria Zhao entered like she owned the place, flanked by 4 security officers in Terra Nova's gray and blue uniforms. Her sharp eyes missed nothing as she surveyed the greenhouse. "Impressive operation, Nakamura," she commented. "Far more advanced than your progress report suggested." "I prefer to underpromise and overdeliver," Elijah replied evenly. Zhao's attention fixed on Naya, whose luminescence was suppressed to the point where she appeared nearly human, albeit with unusually iridescent skin. "And you must be one of our extraterrestrial visitors," Zhao said with cold interest. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am Director Victoria Zhao, head of Xenobotanical Research at Terra Nova Corporation." "I am Naya," she responded simply, giving away nothing more. "Your presence on a Terra Nova facility without proper clearance is problematic," Zhao continued, "but easily remedied. I've been authorized to offer you a research partnership with full diplomatic status." Her smile was predatory. "All we ask is access to your botanical knowledge." "That is not possible," Naya replied. "I am already engaged in a diplomatic alliance with Dr. Nakamura, sanctioned by Ambassador Orion of the Lumari seed ship." Zhao's expression hardened. "No such alliance has been recognized by Terra Nova Corporation or the Earth Coalition Diplomatic Corps." "The paperwork is being processed," Elijah interjected. "Ambassador Orion is in direct communication with Earth authorities." "How convenient." Zhao's voice dripped with skepticism. She gestured to her security team. "Search the facility. Pay particular attention to any non-standard plant specimens or energy signatures." As the guards dispersed, Zhao circled the main chamber like a predator. "Where is the other one?" "Our sensors detected 2 non-human life forms." "My sister is not here," Naya stated truthfully. "Sir," one of the guards called from across the greenhouse. "We're getting unusual readings from that sealed chamber but can't get access." Zhao turned to Elijah, hand extended. "Override codes, Dr. Nakamura, now." "That's my hybridization chamber," Elijah explained, trying to sound casual. "It contains delicate crossbreeding experiments that would be contaminated if exposed." "And yet our sensors detect something far more interesting than plant hybrids," Zhao countered. "The codes, please, or my team will simply cut through the shielding." The standoff was interrupted by a communication alert. To everyone's surprise, it was a priority transmission from the Earth Coalition. The face that appeared on screen belonged to a stern-looking official Elijah didn't recognize. "Director Zhao, this is Admiral Chen of the Coalition Defense Force. Your presence at Viridian Station is in violation of newly established diplomatic protocols. The Lumari seed ship has been granted provisional diplomatic status, including protection for its representatives and biological assets on the planet's surface." Zhao's composure slipped momentarily. "Admiral, with all respect, Terra Nova holds exclusive development rights to Viridian. Any agreements made without our consultation are entirely valid under Interplanetary Statute 47B, the Admiral cut her off. "A coalition diplomatic vessel is en route to formalize arrangements. You are ordered to stand down and withdraw your security personnel immediately." Blooming Alliance. The sky above Viridian Station filled with the elegant forms of Lumari vessels, each one descending in a synchronized spiral that resembled falling petals. Elijah counted 7 ships in total, arranged in a protective formation around the greenhouse dome. "This is no ordinary diplomatic escort," he observed, watching through the observatory section of the dome. Naya's luminescence pulsed with concern. The seed ship would not dispatch so many unless the situation was critical. The lead vessel landed nearest to the greenhouse, unfurling with that distinctive Lumari organic technology. Ambassador Orion emerged, accompanied by Lyra and several other Lumari Elijah hadn't seen before. Their collective bioluminescence created a spectacular light show against the purplish landscape of Viridian. "Something's changed," Elijah said, noting Orion's intensified patterns and the formal arrangement of his entourage. "This looks like more than just diplomatic protection." They met the Lumari delegation outside the dome. Lyra rushed forward to embrace her sister, their patterns synchronizing briefly in what Elijah now recognized as their form of intimate communication. "The Stellaris have bloomed," Lyra said with wonder after they separated. "We felt the resonance even in orbit." "One flower," Naya confirmed. "The first of many, we hope." Ambassador Orion stepped forward, his luminescence shifting to formal patterns. "Elijah Nakamura, what you and Naya have accomplished is unprecedented. No Stellaris has ever bloomed so quickly in a foreign environment." "We had little choice," Elijah explained. "Terra Nova's director Zhao was determined to seize the seedbed." "Victoria Zhao will not be troubling you further," Orion stated with quiet certainty. "The reason for our expanded presence has to do with what Lyra discovered while attempting to contact our fleet." At a gesture from Orion, one of the other Lumari activated a holographic projection that hovered in the air between them. It displayed a series of images: Terra Nova ships in distant star systems, facilities hidden on moons and asteroids, and most disturbing, captured Lumari being experimented on. The harvesters who pursued Naya and Lyra were not independent operators, Orion explained gravely. They were Terra Nova contractors, part of a covert division specializing in xenobiological acquisition. Elijah felt sick. "I knew the corporation was unethical, but there's more," Lyra added. "The facilities where they were conducting these experiments? They're growing corrupted versions of sacred plants from multiple worlds, including those you reported them for harvesting illegally. When Lyra transmitted this evidence to both our government and the Earth Coalition," Orion continued, "it triggered an immediate diplomatic crisis. The Coalition has revoked Terra Nova's exclusive development rights to 17 worlds, including Viridian." The implications were staggering. Elijah had hoped his whistleblowing years ago might lead to changes in Terra Nova's practices, but instead they had simply become more secretive, more ruthless. "What happens to Viridian Station now?" he asked. "That depends partly on you," Orion replied. "The Coalition is proposing a joint stewardship program, the first of its kind. Humans and Lumari working together to develop sustainable terraforming practices with the Stellaris Project as its cornerstone." Naya's patterns brightened with excitement. A true alliance, not exploitation. "Before we can proceed, however," Orion cautioned, "we must deal with one final obstacle. Director Zhao has refused to withdraw from the system. Her ship maintains orbit on the far side of the planet, and she has threatened to deploy atmospheric toxins that would destroy all botanical life on Viridian if her demands are not met." "What demands?" Elijah asked, though he suspected the answer. "The Stellaris seedlings," Lyra said grimly. "She wants them and exclusive rights to whatever they produce." Naya moved protectively toward the greenhouse. "She cannot have them. The Stellaris have chosen their home, and we've chosen to defend it," Elijah added, standing beside her. The crisis escalated quickly. Coalition forces were en route but would not arrive for hours. Terra Nova's ship had moved into position to deploy its toxins, while the Lumari vessels maintained defensive positions around the greenhouse dome. Inside, Elijah and Naya worked feverishly to reinforce the dome's filtration systems, hoping to protect the Stellaris seedlings from whatever Zhao might release into the atmosphere. "The irony," Elijah muttered as he recalibrated air scrubbers. "I came here to help create breathable atmosphere, and now we're fighting to prevent its destruction." Naya, communing with the rapidly growing Stellaris plants, looked up with sudden inspiration. "That's it, Elijah! The atmosphere!" "What do you mean?" Her luminescence pulsed with excitement. "The Stellaris aren't just plants. They're atmospheric processors. That's their primary function in the Lumari ecosystem." Understanding dawned on Elijah. If they're advanced enough, could they counter whatever toxins Zhao deploys? Not alone, and not at their current stage of development, Naya admitted. But with help. She explained her plan quickly. It was risky, untested, but theoretically sound. They would need to accelerate the Stellaris growth cycle even further and synchronize it with the greenhouse's existing terraforming flora. It's going to take all of us, Naya concluded. Every Lumari on the planet, channeling energy to the seedlings. Orion readily agreed to the plan. Within minutes, the Lumari had positioned themselves in a circle around the hybridization chamber, where the Stellaris seedlings continued their remarkable growth. Now nearly 3 feet tall, their luminescent stems pulsed with life energy. We need to move them outside, Naya instructed. They must have direct contact with Viridian's atmosphere to process it effectively. Carefully, they relocated the entire seed bed to the center of a clearing just outside the dome. The Lumari arranged themselves in concentric circles around the plants, with Naya and Elijah at the center. "What do I do?" Elijah asked, feeling out of place among the glowing beings. "Be their anchor," Naya told him, taking his hands and placing them gently on the soil beside the central seedling, the one that had already bloomed. "They know you. Trust you. Remind them what they're fighting for." As the Lumari began their ritual, their luminescence intensified, patterns synchronizing across dozens of bodies until they moved as one organism. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their energy as they channeled it toward the Stellaris seedlings. Elijah felt the seedling beneath his hands respond, its stem growing perceptibly warmer. The single bloom that had opened earlier now pulsed rapidly, releasing minute particles of glowing pollen into the air. "It's working," Naya whispered beside him, her own luminescence merging with the plants. "They're accelerating their reproductive cycle." Above them, sensors detected Terra Nova's ship releasing the first wave of toxins into the upper atmosphere, a cascading chemical reaction designed to break down plant matter at the cellular level. The Stellaris. Blooms opened simultaneously, all 12 plants flowering in a spectacular display. Each bloom released a cloud of bioluminescent pollen that rose rapidly, carried by the natural air currents of Viridian. On the monitoring equipment inside the dome, Elijah's instruments recorded the impossible. The toxins were being neutralized, converted into harmless compounds by the Stellaris pollen. "The atmospheric readings," Lyra called from the communication station. "They're changing across the entire region." The Stellaris weren't just countering the toxins, they were actively improving the atmosphere, accelerating the terraforming process Elijah had begun years ago. On the communication channel, Director Zhao's voice crackled with fury. "What have you done, Nakamura? Our sensors show the toxins dissipating." "They're showing you the future of terraforming," Elijah replied calmly. "Something Terra Nova could have been part of, if you'd chosen cooperation over exploitation." "This isn't over," Zhao threatened. "Actually, it is." Admiral Chen's voice cut in as coalition vessels finally arrived in the system. "Director Zhao, your ship is surrounded, and Terra Nova Corporation is facing serious charges. Stand down immediately." The standoff ended not with violence, but with surrender. Zhao's ship was escorted from the system by coalition forces, while Terra Nova faced the beginning of what would become a years-long legal battle over their illegal xenobiological operations. As twilight settled over Viridian, the Lumari celebration began. Their ritual of synchronized luminescence transformed into something joyful, a dance of light and color that painted the purple landscape with moving patterns. Elijah found Naya at the edge of the festivities, her attention focused on the Stellaris plants, which continued their extraordinary growth under Viridian's 3 moons. "They're different from Lumari Stellaris," she observed as he joined her. "Adapted to this world already. See how the stems are thicker, the blooms larger? Hybrid vigor," Elijah suggested. "The best of both worlds." "Like us," Naya said softly, her luminescence shifting to the warm gold pattern he now recognized as affection. Ambassador Orion approached them. His formal bearing relaxed after the day's success. "The coalition has approved our proposal. Viridian Station will become the first Lumari Human Cooperative Research Center, with the two of you as its directors, if you accept. Elijah looked at Naya, her iridescent eyes reflecting the starlight above. A joint appointment? That's unusual? As is everything about this situation, Orion observed with amusement in his patterns. The Stellaris have made their choice clear. They thrive under your combined care. What about Terra Nova's claim to this world? Elijah asked. Nullified, Orion assured him. Viridian is now under Coalition Lumari protection. Your work here will continue unhindered and expanded, with resources from both our peoples. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Elijah and Naya stood in the center of the Stellaris garden. The plants had now grown to impressive heights, their luminescence creating a canopy of living light above them. Did you plan this? Elijah asked, brushing his fingers against Naya's luminescent patterns. When you crashed near my greenhouse, was it really by chance? Her patterns swirled with amusement. The crash was real enough, but I had studied your work, your history. When we needed to escape, I suggested this trajectory, so you knew who I was. I knew what you had done, she corrected, standing against your own people for what was right. I hoped you might do the same for us. And now, he asked, drawing her closer. Now we build something new? Naya replied, her luminescence intensifying as their bodies touched, something that has never existed before. Above them, the Stellaris blooms opened wider, releasing another cloud of glowing pollen that drifted around them like stars. The plants were responding to them, to their connection, in ways neither could have predicted. The first generation will mature within weeks, Naya said, looking up at the growing canopy, and spread across the valley by next season. Transforming Viridian just as we've been transformed, Elijah observed. As Naya's luminescence merged with his aura, the faint energy field the Stellaris had somehow awakened in him, Elijah realized that this unexpected alliance had given him something he thought he'd lost forever, a purpose larger than himself, and someone to share it with. In the Garden of Alien Light, surrounded by the impossible plants they'd cultivated together, Elijah and Naya sealed their partnership with an embrace that bridged two worlds, while around them, the future quite literally bloomed. The Stellaris Garden of Viridian Station would become legendary in the years that followed, the birthplace of a new approach to colonization, terraforming, and interspecies cooperation. But for those who tended it, it would always be, first and foremost, home.